Hello, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
My name is Jaleesa Smith,
And I'm Erica Hill.
and we are Axe Global.
So the cool thing about our nonprofit is we are a nonprofit that wants to help other nonprofits. So Jaleesa and I started these webinars and our series of webinars to give you tips, suggestions, and guidelines on how to create a long-lasting, effective nonprofit organization. There's so many marginalized populations that need our help. And so we created this to give you the resources to do that. Jaleesa, what is today's topic?
So today we'll be discussing the 9 quick and easy steps that you need to do to get started to creating a nonprofit.
Yes.
First, the basics.
Yes.
To create a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, first you need to form a corporation with the state of Georgia or whatever state you're in. Then you need to apply for your tax-exempt status for whatever state you're in or Georgia. And then do it with the IRS. So, number 1, creating your business name. You want to avoid at all costs a hard to spell organization name.
Yes. If you wouldn't do your legal name like that, don't do your business name like that.
Please. If it's too lengthy, no one's going to remember it. You want something that's quick and easy, that just comes easy and flows well. So, also, don't pick a name that can limit your business growth. So you always want to think about how you can expand in your longevity of your organization. So with that being said, you never want to limit. And that was a mistake that we had to realize in the beginning, because at first we were Axe of Atlanta. But our whole mission and vision was eventually to go global. So that's why we changed the Axe Global. Ding, ding, ding.
Little hint.
Next, you want to make sure you conduct a thorough internet search and trademark search of any names that you're potentially looking into to make sure no one has it covered or trademarked at this point. And make sure it's definitely not trademarked or already incorporated in your state.
You don't want to get excited, get your heart wrapped up on a name, and then you find out somebody else has it.
Next, you want to get a domain name. So this would be something with a .com. So for instance, ours is www.axeglobal.com. Next, you want to use a name that conveys meaning. So you want to pick a name that describes your organization. So AXE, it stands for Advocating Children Towards Success. Simple and easy.
But because it was so long and what Jaleesa was talking about, you wanted something that's easy breezy, we turned it into an acronym,
which made it a lot easier. So next, you want to assess your friends and your network to see if the name is catchy and get feedback on it, because you never want to put something out there. You may love it, but other people may not get it. And if they don't get it, who's to say that anyone else will? So when you're looking for funding and donors, if they don't get it, they're not going to fund you.
They're not going to give you your money for something they don't understand. Would you?
No. Make sure your name also sounds good when you say it aloud. So nothing crazy. Nothing like dogs eat fruit for life. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
And lastly, make sure you're personally happy with the name. This is something
this is your baby.
You have to stick with for the remainder of the organization.
Great.
So next, what you want to do is determine your state's requirements or registration requirements. And you can do this by checking the Secretary of State's website. So if it's with Georgia, it's www.ecorps.ga.gov, and you'll find the link there. Next, number 3, you want to prepare and file your nonprofit's articles of incorporation. You will need to create and file these articles of incorporation with the state, and you can do that again on the state's website. So your articles will include information like your nonprofit's name, and also you may need to include certain provisions that are required for the state and federal letting them know what you're going to do with your organization should your organization end. Mm-hmm. So when they want to know that, they want to know what are you going to do with the assets for the company. Mm-hmm. So, and that's usually should be passed over to another 501c3 once yours ends. Mm-hmm. But let's say it won't. You won't have to worry about that. But you do have to put those provisions in once you do apply.
Better to be safe than sorry.
That's true. Because if you want that 501c3 status, that's something that is definitely required. Next, you should,
step number 4,
get with the Secretary of State. And like I said, go ahead and file those articles of incorporation and ensure that you have your registered agent's name and address, because that is something that you will need as well.
And let's just say right now you don't have a facility or a location, though you may not want to do it at the time. We had to use our home addresses, and at first we were like, oh, do we have to use our home address? But you have to have a physical location, and it's not always a good idea to have a P.O. box with a nonprofit.
That's true. So unless you're balling, you can go ahead and get
now you have a nonprofit.
Seriously. The next step would be you would want to get a actual physical address, and you can do that by registering at the post office for a local address. Mm-hmm. Number 5, choose who will be on your founding board of directors. Your nonprofit, you will need to recruit incorporators for this. Mm-hmm. So your incorporators are going to be people who actually start the nonprofit, and then you must at least have one board of directors on your board. The incorporator is a person who actually signs the articles of incorporation for the nonprofit. You at least need one person, but you can definitely have more.
Yes.
Directors make up the governing body of the organization, and they are the stakeholders of the organization, so they oversee the success of the business. Mm-hmm. Next, you want to appoint other directors and a registered agent. Again, you will need that registered agent once you're filing your online status, as well as your articles of incorporation as well. So typically, you're looking for at least one person or at least 3 people for quorum, and that just means majority rules. So therefore, you can never have a vote that is split. When you're filing, you're going to need a president, a treasury, and someone who's the secretary. These have to be listed in order to complete your filing.
And I also want to mention, you really want to make sure you have a secretary. I know some people are like, oh, we can take turns, but you want to take minutes of your meetings. This is a very, very important when having a nonprofit organization. Always take minutes of your meetings.
Definitely. Your initial board are usually invited by the incorporators to join, but make sure you select people who share your mission. That is very important. If they don't care about your organization, they're not going to be willing to attend the meetings and help out and go out here and advocate for your organization. Secondly, you want to pick people who have a business kind of mindset and have like a business competency as well. It's not necessary for them to have prior experience, but it is definitely something that is great and to have as a business leader. Keep in mind, they should be long-term strategic thinkers. That is very important. And they should also be willing to give their time, money. It's the business. You know, for being on a nonprofit's board, you're going to seek funding. And what better way to start with your board of directors? And they should always understand their role. This is a governance. It's not management. We don't need you to manage the organization. You're coming in to govern it and make sure that it's running sufficiently.
Yes.
And finally, just make sure that whoever you choose to be on your board, they have integrity.
Yes.
You never want to put someone on your board who has a bad reputation, because it's only going to make your organization look bad.
Agreed.
Next, the registered agent we discussed briefly earlier, but I just want to recap who that actually is and what they do. So basically, this person is responsible for receiving all legal documents and signing on the behalf of the organization. This appointed registered agent must be physically located in the state and maintained in the office during regular business hours. Number 6.
Jaleesa, quick question. Someone might ask this. Can a registered agent be one of the co-founders?
Yes, they definitely can. Awesome. So, number 6. You always want to make sure you have a corporate binder of your records.
Yes.
Always. It's very important to keep this binder together, and this binder should include all of your nonprofits or documents such as your articles of incorporation, your bylaws, your minutes. Every time you do your registration each year for the state, you should go ahead and print that out. You should print out all of your IRS filings just to make sure you have this on hand, because if anyone ever asks you for this information, you'll have it readily accessible.
Yes.
Now I'd like to turn it over to Eric.
And I just want to mention, because you made a really big point in maintaining all of your documents, go ahead and invest in a file cabinet. If you can, you want to make sure that you are keeping track of your receipts, all of that. So a file cabinet is a great way to just have it in one central location. So that was a good point. We'll talk later on a different webinar about receipts. So what I'm going to talk about is kind of piggybacking on what Jaleesa was saying about your board. So when you hold your first board meeting, when you pick your board, you want to meet with them at least semi-annually or annually. Now, of course, if you have situations coming up like you need to make a change or alteration to your bylaws, then you will request a board meeting for everyone to vote on those alterations of your bylaws. It's actually a really, really good idea to have it annually and semi-annually when you first start out. For example, if you're just starting out, you want to meet with your board at least every 6 months. This helps you to see the momentum of your board. Is this a board that you can always gather up when there's a situation? So it kind of helps you gauge if you pick the right board members. And it's just a great way as you're starting out to just have that support. Your board, when you pick them, like Jaleesa was saying, you want to pick professional resources. So every 6 months meeting with them, this helps you think of fundraising ideas. This helps you think of marketing ideas. Now, once you get to about your 3-year mark, then you can kind of space it out annually. For Jaleesa and I, we meet every January. January is our board and alteration month. That is when we plan. That is when we meet with our board to vote on it. So it's very, very important that you pick a month that works for everyone in your board and to make sure that it's consistent. Another thing, like Jaleesa is saying, that for your minimum number of board members, you want to make sure it's at least 3, and this helps with voting. So you never want to have an even number, because when it comes to voting, you're going to be there forever. So you want to have an odd number. There is no max number in your board, but like I said, you just want to make sure that it's odd. You can have as many people as you want. I don't personally think that's a good idea, because I will state this: your board members can vote you out of your own nonprofit organization. Hate to say it to you. So you want to make sure that you have people that are not only going to have integrity, not only going to strive for the mission and vision, but that you can trust that they're not going to try to slip the rug from up under you. Okay? So you want to make sure you have all that. There's also no max term on how long a board member can have their seat. So a board member can typically be with a nonprofit organization 1 to 5 years. And each time you vote on if that board member will stay or if they will be replaced. For us, we go ahead and tell our board members it's a 1-year position. And we do that because each year things happen. And we don't want someone to have to commit to 2 years when really they're only thinking about something for this year. So we vote, like, again, we pick January because that just starts out our year knowing who's on our board, who's committed, and what we're going to do. The next thing we're going to talk about is drafting your bylaws. So you heard me talk about with your board members in case you want to amend and change your bylaws. So it's very, very important that you draft your bylaws correctly the first go around, because you're going to have to gather everybody up to redo it. So for Jaleesa and I, when we changed our name for Atlanta to Acts Global, we had to completely change our bylaws entirely. So you want to make sure that you try to get it right the first go around. What we did was we had a lawyer actually draft it for us and look over it for us, and then we looked over it, because this is a roadmap and a guidebook for your nonprofit organization. So just having a legal perspective on it, just make sure that you are going to be 100% covered. Your nonprofit is going to be 100% covered. Everybody knows their duties and responsibilities, and you shouldn't have any issues, and you shouldn't have to amend anytime soon. So if you can, go ahead and have a lawyer look over it. If you get a lawyer or another nonprofit, go ahead.
Can I say, you said if you can. It's actually very necessary.
Okay, so see, I try to give you the if. I tried to say you a little coins, but if you, no, not even if you can. You really do need that legal eye, because they can just give you a legal perspective on things that you would never think about. Like, for example, when Jaleesa and I started, we didn't know our board could actually vote us out. So we actually had to put some things in there that protected us and our baby. Like, this is our baby, but we had to put things that protected us. So even if you have a lawyer look over it, you still need to read over it. Jaleesa and I scanned that document, and I can't tell you, it's tons and tons of pages. It's a tedious job, but it is absolutely necessary. This is like your nonprofit, like, internal affairs guidebook. Like, you have to make sure this is in tip-top shape. Okay. Another thing, the next step is incorporate online, or if you want to do a nonprofit academy, or if you want to do something like InkFile, LegalZoom. The pros and cons of incorporating your nonprofit with that is, make sure you read your reviews, read how other people's process is with LegalZoom or with InkFile. See if that's the right thing for you guys. For Jaleesa and I, we did a nonprofit academy where we were guided through the entire steps on creating a nonprofit. So the good thing about our webinars is we can give you the steps on doing this, so you can use ours on top of if you want to use a LegalZoom or you want to use an InkFile to just guide you through the process. In order for a nonprofit to be considered tax exempt, you have to incorporate it as a 501c3. And I'm just repeating what Jaleesa was talking about. You have to have it incorporated as a 501c3. Most grants and businesses will want your tax information to validate that you are a nonprofit 501c3 incorporation. And how they will look at that is something called your EIN number, which leads into our next step, obtaining necessary license and permits. Listen, in Beyonce voice. You want to make sure you file for an EIN number. Your EIN number is basically like your nonprofit social security number. Most businesses and grants do not want your personal social security number. They want your nonprofit's EIN number. For one, this helps them to get a tax exempt by donating to your nonprofit organization. It's almost like scratch my back, I scratch your back. So even though they're donating out of the goodness of their heart, they still want to write it off in their taxes. And some businesses are actually obligated to have a certain amount of donations by the end of the year. So giving a business your EIN number allows for that to have a smooth transaction. You can actually obtain your EIN number through the IRS. And all of this is done once you are incorporating your 501c. When you get your EIN number, guard it with your life. This goes back to having a file cabinet. You want to make sure, because it is a very lengthy and, I will just be honest, annoying process of trying to get that EIN number back for the IRS. It can be done. But just to prevent that headache, go ahead and keep your EIN number. Make copies. Like, we have tons of copies of our EIN number. I have a copy. She has a copy. We have a copy saved in our Google Drive. You want to just make sure that you can get to it by any means necessary. Nonprofits are often incorporated, like I said, for that tax exempt status. So having that EIN number, it just gives you that tax exempt status. So get that as soon as possible. That is your SSN, Social Security number.
And can I just say something about that tax ID number? when you do get it, you need to make sure that your nonprofit is doing everything you need to do to make sure that you keep it. Because once you lose it, it is going to be so difficult to get it back. The IRS looks at you like, I won't say that word. They don't care about you.
I think they read it in your face.
They don't care about you as much once you lose it. Like, it is going to be extremely difficult to get it back. So just make sure that your organization is keeping a straight and narrow line with everything you do as far as your funding and your money, and just making sure that you're staying within the guidelines to keep your status.
Yes, and that goes back to your bylaws. Follow your bylaws. If you put in there that the co-founders won't get paid this way, or even down to the money, because that is a very very big factor that prevents a lot of nonprofits from continuing to be successful. It's because technically there's a lot of yellow lines when it comes to founders getting paid. So it's very important, like she said, that you're keeping up with things like that. Next thing is, so I told you your EIN is kind of like your federal level. I'm going to tell like your state and your local levels. So for a state, typically a nonprofit organization doesn't need a business license. It really depends on your state. And that's just more so if you're trying to make your nonprofit a separate and unique legal entity. If you want to do more on a state level with your nonprofit, then you have to obtain a business license. It's not necessary. However, if you want to do that, you need to check. Now, let me backtrace. It's not necessary in the state of Georgia. However, we're not 100% sure on if it's necessary for other states. So definitely check on your Secretary of State website. Definitely check on just Googling that just whole thing, like, do I need a business license if I'm a nonprofit in the state of Alabama or Alaska? So definitely do your research. Please do your research. Now, on a local requirement, again, this is not something that is required in the state of Georgia. However, we're not sure because there are some local jurisdictions that have their own tax system. And so they want you to have a local license in order for you to tax on your goods and your services. So definitely check to see if your city or county has a tax registration certificate, and that will just allow your nonprofit to operate on a local level. Again, in the state of Georgia, you do not need to follow the state and local requirements in terms of a licensure. However, in other states, everything is different. Please do your research. And I also want to mention that Georgia has a lot of counties. For example, we operate in the city of Atlanta and DeKalb County. So for us, it's different rules. So for you who might be in Savannah or Macon or Blue Ridge, different areas like that, still check to see, even though we're saying in the state of Georgia, still check to see if your county requires you to have that local license. And that concludes all of today's webinar. Jalissa, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it. You've done a great job on that.
Well, thank you, sis. So did you.
We hope that you all learned a lot and that you've gathered a lot of information. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to email us at info@axglobalinc.com.
Yes, go on our website if you need any more information at www.axglobalinc.com. Please don't be shy. This is such a learning process, and we're here to help. This is why we're doing it. So please let us know if you have any questions. Tune into next month's webinar as we discuss our mission, vision, target audience, and demographics. You do not want to miss it. Sign up for your link today. Everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Bye.